Party time. How about that thirst? What's your pleasure? Beer, dear? Miller High Life. You have good taste.
Budweiser. It has a taste, it has a drinkability, it has a smoothness that only Beechwood aging can deliver. So, get thirsty. Budweiser's the best reason in the world to drink beer.
It's no city beer. It's Coors.
It's the high country. Climb up to Coors.
You know, during the 70s, beer was so dumbed down and watered down, and everybody was looking for the lightest, crispest flavor. And that seemed to be what consumers wanted, and they still do on a mass scale. I mean, 80% of the beer in the United States is innocuous, flavorless, you know, American domestic beers. But the American beer scene really was just enabled in the late 70s, early 80s, and as soon as it started, it took off. I mean, people wanted good beer. And there was Red Tail Ale that sprung from New Albion from 1978, and there was Fritz Maytag doing Anchor that was just unbelievable. I mean, I moved out here and a buddy of mine lived up in Humboldt County. He came down to pick me up and put some Anchor Steam in my hand. He's like, try this, man, this is 84, right? There's nothing going on. And I'm like, holy shit, that's bitter. He goes, yeah. I said, all right, by the end of the bottle, I wanted another, and I never looked back. And Sierra Nevada was around, and there were just these options all of a sudden. And as soon as the consumer had the option, they just slowly but surely, I mean, they just keep going and going. And my name is Ron LINDENBUSCH. I've been in the business for quite a while. You know, Tony McGee's our founder and the Imperial Warlord. Met Tony McGee in '94 when he was first selling kegs out of his pickup truck, and kind of latched on, and here we are. He was in the printing business and didn't like his job. He figured he was relatively unemployable and needed to find a company that he could start that would be something that he'd want to do for a long time. And he loved good beer, and he saw the beer business blossoming in the early 90s, and he just decided to give it a go. Got a homebrew kit from his brother and made a few batches, you know, and his family liked it, his friends liked it, and he thought, what the hell, I'll make a business out of this.
So you want me to brew, is that the thing?
Yeah.
All right, so I need to
Grind
grind for like the next 10 minutes.
Okay, cool. Well, that's going to be...
All right, so my name is Nate, or Nathan Oyler. I have been brewing for 10 years now. I got my first homebrew kit for my 21st birthday. Like most new homebrewers, the first few batches were pretty miserable. Eventually, you know, I just kept brewing and kept trying and would come up with new recipes and figure out what happened. And since then, in the last 10 years, I've started making, you know, lots of ridiculously good beer. So since I've already been homebrewing for 10 years, this resounding call from over the years has been, why don't you open a brewery? So finally, just this past year, I finally decided it was time to make it happen. My grandfather used to be a home brewer back in the 1970s or early 60s, somewhere 60s, 70s. I was like, you know what, this is something my grandfather would have really understood and appreciated. I kind of like the idea of doing something with my hands, and that my grandfather completely understood and would be supportive of. Definitely I make a lot of IPAs and variations on IPAs. Porters are something that I like. I like a nice dark roasty beer, so I make a lot of porters. So in the state of California, a single adult is allowed to brew 100 gallons of beer per year legally. And if you have a family and you're the head of household or whatever, it's 200 gallons.
Every state has their own legislative issues, and that all came out of Prohibition. So when the laws changed in the late 70s and Jimmy Carter signed his bill to allow home brewing, and you know, California created a set of laws that really gives craft brewing a chance. The good thing is that the breweries that are making great beer, in my mind and in the consumer's mind, are all doing phenomenally well. We're employing a lot of people. We're becoming important parts of our communities all around the country. So, you know, that's something that really is a significant thing for our society, is that we are a jobs industry. Last year we crested 7% of the beer sold in the United States as craft brewers, but we employ 50% of the brewery employees. And that statistic alone just blows my mind. When I first heard that, I was like, wow, we suck. We're so inefficient.
I'm Beth Wathen, and this is our little enclave in San Francisco, City Beer Store. This is Miss O, Olivia.
And I'm Craig Wathen, co-proprietor and husband of Beth.
So yeah, the business model of what we do it was an original idea. Not only can you take bottles to go and talk to people and interact with the staff and get suggestions, but by adding the on-premise, you could also taste the beer. So that was kind of the concept, something borrowed from what you do when you come into a wine bar. Both Beth and I, we weren't married at the time, but we were living together in San Francisco and making a pretty good living and, you know, doing all right. But our heart really wasn't behind what we were doing. If I'm going to spend so much time and I'm going to be going to work, it's something that I don't know, want to be a little bit more into. We took a year off to travel, but we also worked while we traveled. Did a couple different business plans, the beer store being one of them. And when we came back, we put it into motion.
We were really welcomed in the beer community. We found there was a real strong appreciation for what we were doing, and people were excited. People had a very hard time wrapping their minds around the idea of a beer-only establishment. They kept insisting that at some point we would add wine to the mix.
Sure. We wanted to force people to embrace our concept. So for instance, you've got somebody that comes in with a friend that doesn't like beer, especially early on, we would see people forced to try something, have a Belgian quad or a sour beer, and go nuts, and say to us, I'm glad that you didn't have wine. Took about a year and a half to get it rolling, but that was the process. As far as why did we choose that, this was our passion.
My name is Robin Biles. I'm a senior bartender and the beer buyer here at ZEITGEIST, and I've been here about 16 years. It used to be more of a motorcycle bike messenger bar, and warm beer, cold women used to be on all the t-shirts, and it's kind of it used to be our theme. ZEITGEIST has definitely lived up to its name, ZEITGEIST, spirit of the times. We have the ability to pour a lot more craft beers, and we have a different crowd in here. Like groups of ladies come in and order pitchers of beer, which wasn't quite so common 10 years ago. I think we've definitely gone more into the craft beer realm. It gives us the ability to rotate a lot more beers in and out because we do have a lot of beers that stay the same. Racer 5 is our most popular beer, and on busy weeks I'm ordering up to 10 kegs of that per week. Lagunitas is right behind them, probably 6, 7 kegs during the busy season. And even during the winter, I'm ordering 6 to 8 kegs of the most popular beers. ZEITGEIST is a very weather-dependent bar. There's not a lot of places in San Francisco that have outdoor seating, and if there's a forecast for nice weather, I jam-pack the walk-in cooler. I mean, we do have a lot of imported beers and beers from across the country, but I especially like to support the local economy, order what's close by. We have a lot of people that distribute independently that come in here.
I am the head brewer at Southern Pacific Brewing Company here in San Francisco. My background was basically started in home brewing. Started to slowly get into professional brewing, kind of helping out some professional brewers, getting to know them. I met Mike Bruce and Steve Bruce and Eric Chang. They owned the San Francisco Brewcraft, and they had just started Speakeasy Ales and Lagers. The brewery at the time was small enough. I think we were probably around 700 barrels a year, where it was workable, and that's how I started in the professional world. I had been working with Chris Lawrence though there. He had been doing sales. After a few years, he decided he wanted to take on this project and open up a brewery. And as far as like the motivation that goes, this is what we've always dreamed of doing. Overall, it's the model. The brewpub model itself, I think, if done correctly, is very successful. We're serving directly from manufacturing to a retail. There's no middleman, there's no distributor. We're doing it ourselves, so the margin is there for the business.
What makes ZEITGEIST cool is the backyard. On a sunny day, everybody in San Francisco wants to be here because it's like the place to be. Great beer selection, snooty bartenders. It's a fun place to be. During the beer selection process, we get together with about 6 or 7 people, go downstairs, we have a fridge, sample beer, tasting, notes, and that's how we decide on what's gonna go on tap. Currently we have 64 handles, 48 beers on draft. Both ends are the same. That way when you're working on East Register, West Register, you don't have to run back and forth from each end if the popular beers, which we call the Sweet 16, are on tap, so you don't have to go back and forth. Obscure beers that we rotate are in the middle 32, which we call that. Oh, with the renovation, it was great. I mean, we went from squeezing behind the bar, let's say this plank here was the bar, and you'd have like 5 or 6 guys behind the bar. Now it's like table size. People can move behind the bar now. And now we have a big cooler downstairs that's probably one of the best state-of-the-art cooler systems you'll find in the United States. And it holds, when full, when we have it full, I believe it holds 232 kegs. The craft beer movement has just totally been off the charts. Just in this past year alone, there's supposed to be 1,200 new breweries opening up in the U.S.
7 years ago when we got going, it was a different world as far as what we had available and what we could purchase and what we could put on our shelves. I would estimate that about 85% of the beers we now carry, we could not have carried 7 years ago. As well as the breweries themselves, call it 30% of the breweries that we have on our shelves now didn't even exist. It's just essential for this concept. Having new beers come out every week. You know, almost every week we have 5 to 10 beers come out. Well, hey, if we can put them on tap, we can drive excitement, especially on the West Coast. We have more access to West Coast beers in that. You know, now we seem to be more domestic driven, and we're actually seeing imported beers using the West Coast as their inspiration in what they do now.
Part of the reason why we opened City Beer in San Francisco is because we live in San Francisco, and we support our local community, and by supporting local breweries in our neighborhood, in our backyard, it's just what we want to do. It's really the foundation of City Beer.
I mean, we know these people. You know, these aren't huge businesses. We know them as people. We know them as friends. We've seen them in a couple instances be on the other side of our counter as customers, be home brewers, and now be head brewers, owning breweries, working at breweries. It makes it easy to look around when you don't have to look far at all. For
magical IPAs.
Yeah, magical IPAs.
Exactly how does one brew beer? It seems like some sort of crazy chemistry set gone wrong in order to make this drinkable, wonderful product that we all know and love. But really, if you can make tea, then you can make beer. Basically, it all starts with malted barley. That just gets cracked, and then you dump it into a pot and you let it steep for about an hour. Once the steeping is done, you drain all of that liquid off. It's going to be super sticky sweet, and you put it into a pot and you start boiling it. And the boiling it will really break down the complex sugars to make it easier for the yeast to consume. Then lovely, 3 weeks later, your beer is basically done. So I bet probably I make about 100 gallons of beer per year.
I don't know the exact numbers, but I definitely made over 1,000 barrels of beer, which first year in a brew pub, that's pretty good. I'm coming from a production background, I have to say pub brewing is much more fun. You have the ability to be more creative. I get to make a lot of different kinds of beers now. I get a lot more leeway and creativity in the process. You know, there's lots and lots of new breweries opening up nationwide and even here in the Bay Area itself. The growth in the last 4 or 5 years has been pretty good. But on the horizon, I see a lot of growth, actually.
I think that the clientele is ordering more beer from us now. We have a bigger variety, but I think also they're probably ordering more beer other places too. There's just a huge craft beer surge right now.
Yeah, the family is very supportive. Everybody thinks it's a great idea. They've had my homebrew for years and are excited that I'm starting a business. I mean, honestly, who's ever happy working for anybody? You're only happy if you work for yourself. So this is my route into the world of working for myself.
We're developing a brewing culture in America that hasn't happened since before Prohibition. We're all part of a cultural change here that's going to keep going. I mean, there's no end in sight to people drinking better beer and getting off the crap.
Prost.